I've been promising you something janky, so I guess it's about time I got to it. Well, there we go. It crashed. Got a nice little blue screen there. Hey there, Vince here, and welcome to another Circuit Rewind. And apologize for my voice today because I'm coming off a really bad cold and I can't talk worth crap right now. So I guess I'm about as janky as this build I'm about to tell you about. Awesome! So without anything else, let's just jump right into what this hardware is so we can get that out of the way before we can actually see this thing in action. First off, we have an ASRock B550 ITX AC motherboard, so AC being Wi-Fi. In there, I have an AMD Ryzen 9 3900X processor. I've paired that with a pair of 8 gig sticks of RAM for 16 gigs of RAM. Who knows what speed they are? I didn't care, I just grabbed whatever was available in inventory at the time. Speaking of randomly grabbing whatever is available in inventory at the time, I also paired this with a Kingston 60 gig SATA SSD, not even an NVMe drive. So whatever, it doesn't matter too much for this test. Powering all this, we have an EVGA 550 GA PSU. And then, the one spec I haven't talked about, the GPU, and that's kind of where the jank starts. And here, let me turn it over to these other guys to explain where this GPU is, why it's special, and, what's going on with this.
Our old friend Ivan, who worked here from 2017 to 2019 and who I actually worked with back in my NCIX days, has offered up his complete GPU collection for auction, with proceeds going to help civilians in the humanitarian crisis in Ukraine. And Ivan's collection originally encompassed every single flagship GPU ever made by both ATI/AMD and NVIDIA. There's also the 3DFX Voodoo 5500, the last card released by that company.
So that's right, this GPU right here is the one that you just saw autographed by Luke and Linus of LMG on the WAN show. The auction went for just shy of $1,300 Canadian, which I was glad to pay to help support the funding of children over in Ukraine with all the BS that's going on over there from then and still going on now. Thanks to the LMG crew for matching that and doubling up the payment there. Okay, but wait, there's one problem with the GPU. Back then, graphics cards either use the PCI bus, which computers don't have anymore, or the AGP bus, which the computers don't have anymore. So what's going on here? Well, obviously, you're watching a Jankinator video. You already know what's going on here. So what I have here is the Voodoo 5500 plugged into this AGP adapter to PCI Express. And the person who makes these adapters, his name is Oscar, and you may have seen his work on the internet before. Like if you've seen recent Voodoo anything on the internet, 3DFX anything on the internet, it was probably all by one guy. One of his projects is he developed this specific board here. This takes the PCI Express slot and adapts it to be an AGP slot instead. When doing research for this, I found out that AGP is really not that far from PCI. So in old computers, we had what was called a PCI bus. So not lanes, but a bus. So if you had, let's say, 4 of those white PCI slots, they would all literally share the same bandwidth. The same wires, the same 32-bit lanes are wired to all 4 of them, and then there's just a little select thing that says which card should be active for any given signal going back and forth. And so that 133 megabytes a second of bandwidth would be shared between your GPU and your sound card, your hard drive controller, and everything else. And so they all had to share that bandwidth. Well, as gaming started to become a thing and dedicated graphics accelerators and graphics processors became a thing, engineers quickly were like, hey, we need to pull this off that main bus and give it its own dedicated bus, separate from everything else, so that way it's not sharing that bandwidth. So they created the accelerated graphics port, which in reality is just a second PCI bus. And in the workstation and the server worlds, we're used to having multiple PCI buses rather than a single bus. So that way we can have more bandwidth for high-end network cards, high-end storage, SCSI controllers, things like that. AGP was a proprietary pseudo-standard way of saying, hey, we're going to shove a second PCI slot on here, or a second PCI bus on here, but give it a different connector so you know it's something different entirely, unlike with servers and workstations where it's still essentially the same type of slot, there's just multiple of them. The other thing they did, though, to make it accelerated to begin with, is they increased the data rate of it. So normal PCI bus is at 33 megahertz, and the original AGP bus was 66 megahertz. So not only did you get your own dedicated bus for your graphics card, but you also doubled the performance of it. So there have been a couple other AGP to PCI and AGP to PCI Express adapters on the market, and they all failed for the same reason in terms of performance, because they're still using the original 33 megahertz bus. So what Oscar wanted to do is make something specific to the Voodoo 5. Like, this board is built spec for spec to what the Voodoo 5 expects. So it runs at that full 66 megahertz and then translates that over to PCI Express, so you get the full bandwidth going to the GPUs here. Really awesome stuff. I love having this, and it's really cool to be able to play with this. When these adapters are available, they're a little over 300 bucks a piece. That's about what I paid for mine, and they're hand built, so they only show up from time to time online. That's why I kept hinting in videos, hey, there's a Jankinator video coming, hey, there's one coming, there's one coming, because I was waiting for that really slow boat ride. Plus, again, the thing looks like it's hand built, not factory built. So literally every little component on this board, I think he hand soldered to it, looking at how it was built. This thing needs to run, so let's get it running with my $69, nice, LTT power button. Let's just fiddle over here. There's where the pins are. All right. And I'm going to sit here and start mashing the F8 key because I need the boot menu. There we go. There's a picture. So I will say with this setup, it takes longer to get that initial first image on the screen. I don't know why. It's something I haven't been able to figure out, but putting the Voodoo card in another machine, it pops up instantly. Okay. First screen of Jank. Here's your advanced boot options for Windows 7. It's kind of not fully on the screen. It looks a little wonky. The reason I need to do this is I'm going to come down here to driver signature enforcement. And if we can see the rest of the text, it talks about disabling driver signature enforcement. We'll come into that in a bit. All right, I'm going to hit enter here. And if we notice, the wonkiness is still kind of there. We have no color on the screen at all. And there are some weird lines, and things are still kind of at that trapezoidal angle. I've never been able to figure out why. That's just how it is when it's at the boot menu. Go figure. Anyway, at the Windows desktop, let me just log in here. And there we go. We have a Windows 7 desktop. All right, I'm going to open the Start menu. I'm going to go to Device Manager. Why do you keep adding extra characters? Am I going to have to switch keyboards? All right, so as you can see, if I just drag the window around, it just randomly will lag. This is not exactly a happy interface, I will say that. And if I go to display adapters, yes, it is actually fully accelerated. Ooh, that's a great test right there. So yes, you can see that we are indeed using the 3DFX Voodoo GPU drivers. Also, we can see that this is Windows 7 Ultimate. Let's load up DXDiag to see what that says. And from here, you can clearly see that we are running the 64-bit version of Windows 7 Ultimate. Thanks to the community, we have 64-bit drivers for this thing, but they're not digitally signed, so we have to turn off that driver enforcement to get this to work. Which also means that we now get this test mode, Windows 7 down here in the bottom right. Yeah, there's a way to disable the text, but I'm lazy and it just kind of adds to the jank factor having that extra little text label down there. With this, anyway, it does work. So unlike playing Doom 2016 on an RTX 3080 via an old PCI slot, like this actually runs like a Voodoo 5 normally with full Voodoo performance. So I'm going to start out with Unreal Tournament. Maybe. I guess it's just being a little slow to load. And as you can see, we're running through the UT intro
In
perfectly smooth.
2291, in an attempt to control violence among deep space miners, the New Earth government legalized no-holds-barred fighting. Leandri Mining Corporation, working with the NEG, established a series of leagues and bloody public exhibitions. The fight's popularity grew with their brutality. Soon, Leandri discovered that the public matches were their most profitable enterprise. The Professional League was formed, a cabal of the most violent and skilled warriors in known space, selected to fight in a grand tournament. Now it is 2341. 50 years have passed since the founding of Deathmatch. Profits from the tournament number in the hundreds of billions. You have been selected to fight in the Professional League by the Leandri Rules Board. Your strength and brutality are legendary. The time has come to prove you are the best. To crush your enemies. To win the tournament.
So I'm going to go up here first to Preferences. And you can see for this monitor, it's a 1280 by 1024 monitor. So we're running at a decent resolution right now. So let's go up here to Game, Start Practice Session. Let's change some mutators, and I want this to be Instagib. So let's oh, my keybinds are a little off. That's fine. Nice. I love this game way too much. And of course, this keyboard's gonna screw me up. Anyway, that's Unreal Tournament 99. By default, that won't actually work though. So let me show you here real quick. Unreal Gold and UT99, they're both the UE1 engine, so they both ship with the same files and have apparently the exact same bug, and I've not corrected Unreal Gold yet. So let's go ahead and run Unreal Gold and watch it break. So as you can see here, Unreal Gold just does not want to launch correctly. It doesn't know what to do, it just gets stuck. Speaking of stuck, it also makes my mouse extremely slow to use. Oh my god, this is going to be painful because I didn't already open this up. Get down here, right click. Let's get Task Manager open. Oh boy. Welcome to the Jankinator. We've almost got this. All right, cool. Just got to come down here. Come on, mouse, cooperate. Oh, wait, wrong mouse cursor. Come on, you're almost there. Oh, don't erase my window. Come on, please, give me my window. Please, please. Please give me my window. Just a little bit more. Just a little bit more. I have no idea if I just killed the correct application or not. Yes, let's end the Unreal process. And then as you can see, as soon as the process is ended, mouse comes back and the computer is working just fine again. So I have the system folder open here, and you'll notice that it ships with this glide2x.dll file. So I'm gonna take this file, I'm gonna cut it out of here. I'm going to go up here, and I just have this backup folder here. I'm going to paste it there so I don't lose the file in case I need it for whatever reason, but I know that I don't. And now I'm going to run Unreal Gold again. And just like with UT, it does take a little bit of time for things to start up. I don't know if it's GPU initialization stuff, as like we saw with the system booting, or anything, or how sometimes it's slow to draw, but either way, Remove that file, the game loads up just fine. So what that is, that's actually part of the Glide driver set. And we're using very highly customized drivers. So that file actually already exists in the Windows folder with the driver set that we installed. So by removing the file, Unreal can no longer find its local copy, so then it goes back to its default and it searches the system path and finds the Windows copy of it and uses that one instead, which is our custom driver. And our custom driver happens to be the 64-bit version instead of 32-bit. And it's specific with some hacks to make it work on modern operating systems like Windows 7. Okay, Windows 7. Speaking of that, why am I running that of all operating systems? These drivers are actually built for Windows XP 32 and 64-bit edition. And Windows 7 has a backwards compatibility driver interface for using Windows XP drivers still. What sucks is starting in Windows 8, that interface has been removed, so Windows 7 is the newest thing we could run. And if you follow other tech YouTubers on the internet, they like to benchmark any specific piece of hardware with the rest of the system maxed out to say, hey, nothing else is the bottleneck, right? Well, I wanted to shove the absolute fastest stuff I can grab, well, not really, I just whatever I had laying around, and see how far I could push the Voodoo 5 if nothing else could get in this way. Mind you, this card was released back in the early gigahertz race when computers were still 1 gigahertz, and we're not even counting the IPC changes or anything like that. And back then, dual-core computers didn't even exist yet. Windows 98, for instance, can't even use more than 1 CPU core. So 12 cores, 24 threads of modern Ryzen awesomeness, massive gigs of RAM that just did not exist in that thing's era. Just an immense amount of compute resources. And like I said, with the Windows 98, you can only have 1 core, so that meant the operating system, all your peripherals, the desktop, any background surfaces, everything, and your games had to share that same core, versus nowadays, even if I'm running single-threaded applications, Windows can live on, 8 different cores, while the game and the GPU is living on another one isolated by itself with nothing else interfering with it. So that means that raw compute, that we're just shoving numbers at this card as fast as humanly possible. But does that really net to any sort of performance boost? Sadly, in preliminary testing, it doesn't look like it, because I did a quick race between this GPU and my other Voodoo 5 on a Windows 98 rig, and the other one actually came out ahead ever so slightly faster. With this rig, even though we have tons of compute, there's also other limiting factors, such as the conversion to get it to the AGP interface, as well as wonkiness with the versions of the drivers that are in use. I don't have a choice in what drivers I can use, really, versus the other one has highly, highly optimized drivers. Either way, though, still kind of interesting that, we're getting very, very similar results between the two systems. And really, on that other system, the CPU is way, way over-spec'd for the Voodoo card anyway. Alright, so let's try out another game. Since I'm on an FPS kick, apparently, let's go to Quake 2, which definitely is a Glide card. So, awesomely enough, this was actually the very first Glide application that I got working on the Jank. I was on a live Discord call with about 30 other people when it happened, and the whole chat just kind of froze and blew up because I'm just there. It's a weekly show where we just kind of all chat together, and it's just people hanging out, right? I'm not the focus of it. I'm just kind of a guy in the chat. And then all of a sudden, everyone just stopped and they're like, wait, what? It's working? You finally got the damn thing to work? And here we go. As you can see, it's running beautifully. This is working amazingly. When this came up, there's no question at all that it was definitely using Glide full hardware rendering. Because when I was trying Unreal Tournament, I was able to get the software render to work at first, but it wasn't until I figured out that DLL issue that I was able to get the hardware renderer to work. All right, enough of that. Gonna quit out of there. All right, another glide game I'm gonna try. And, well, you can already tell by my expression whether it's gonna work or not. Let's try some Diablo 2. Well, it's certainly trying something. Wow, there we go, it crashed. Got a nice little blue screen there. Yeah, so I'm totally at a loss for that one. Diablo is just kind of dead, I guess. It creates a blue screen, some sort of error within the actual 3DFX drivers itself. So some sort of call that that game is making, those drivers just do not like and will not run. I haven't been able to figure out why, but if you have ideas on what the issue might be, please let me know, because I'd like to screw around with this a bit more later and try to get that working. All right, well, a Jankinator build needs more jank. Like, having things crash, that's not fun. I want to see things get wonky. You know, that's what I love the best, right? So I'm now going to enable wonky mode on Windows 7. So not there. Let's go, let's do some personalization on the desktop. One cool feature about Windows 7, and I guess Windows Vista is where it came out, but Windows 7 kind of pushed it to the next level, is that they introduced glass. It introduced the semi-transparency around the title bar and certain aspects of the windows, which is a really, really cool effect where you can see some of the contents behind them. So let's go ahead and enable that on this card. I'm going to come down here, and let's just select the architecture theme. All right, we got the background. That's the Space Needle next to the EMP, and yes, I'm going to call it the EMP. I don't care what the hell it's called today because of, you know, period accurateness and whatnot. And it did not even try to enable Aero. Let's try another one. There we go, that time it enabled Aero. First off, my mouse is lagging differently than it did before. My mouse still actually moves at a decent rate, but it's at the position of the signal that it received about like 20, 30, 40 signals ago. And it's signals, not time. So where it is right now, like if I start moving it right, it does whatever I was doing so many signals before because it built up a queue buffer. And now it's kind of locked because there's no inputs going on. So if I start moving it left, all that right action starts going on, and now it's starting to pick up the right. I said that backwards. So now it was moving left. It still has a bunch of left movements in the buffer. I'm going to start moving it right. Now let's start moving it left again. And you can see that it's lagged behind on whatever the buffer was. Also, notice the desktop, while there's a desktop image, all the icons are gone. They're still there somewhere. Like, you get little glimpses of them as I move the mouse around. This window contents, as I move the mouse around, you can kind of see it. So I'm going to move the mouse back and forth. Yeah, so I'm on the title bar. I'm going to click and drag to try to drag this window around and see if we can get anything to show up. All sorts of corrupt video. Let's try just opening the start bar with the mouse or the keyboard here. And there goes the start bar. It's completely all kinds of wonky too. The mouse is actually not lagging as bad as it was. It's starting to catch up. Interesting. I haven't actually tried using this mode that long before. I just gave up immediately when it started screwing up, but it's almost catching up to my movements. And the desktop's starting to come back. Wow, what is going on? I can almost actually use this. So I get one line at a time of Notepad apparently. Can I see all the text? Yeah, it's all there. So it's kind of like going in and out of being able to work and not being able to work. This is just really, really bizarre. I wonder if games still work when it's in a mode like this. So I should have UT99 selected. Let's try to load up UT99 and see if it still works. And with this, because half the screen is gone, it's a pain in the butt. Like, if I just disable Aero, I believe I have to do a full reboot to be able to actually get the system stable again. Well, so far, we have the loading screen. And yeah, the game works just fine, even though when we're in the broken Aero mode. That's okay. So yeah, mouse seems to be, yeah, the mouse is working perfectly fine in this mode, it looks like. I'm guessing there's a little bit of lag, but I think that's because of I'm running it through a capture card from what I'm looking at over here. I'm actively watching it through OBS on my laptop while the main feed is on the display for you guys. And it just disabled Aero on itself because it entered a full screen game, and when it came out of it, wow, it fixed itself. Huh. I guess I didn't need to reboot the computer to make it work again. That is really, really kind of freaking awesome. Anyway, with that, this has been a really janky experience. If you want to see me do more with this hardware, if there's some game you'd like me to test with this, let me know. I will install anything you want with this that uses Glide. I'm even working on a Glide test application myself specifically to make it easier to do tuning on the rotating 4K with these cards when in 3DFX mode. That's about all I got for you today. I hope you enjoyed this one, and I want to keep this around and keep doing more with it. And like I said, I do own more than one 3DFX Voodoo 5500. The other one is another custom build. It's special because I modified it, not because of where it came from. And I'm planning to take it to PDX LAN in the fall this year. So if you are in the Pacific Northwest, or if you want to come to the Pacific Northwest, check out PDX LAN because it's a giant 800-person LAN party. We all get together, we bring our rigs together, we game together, and I want to bring my other rig with me. That's a Windows 98 rig, and actually play UT99 with period accurate hardware and see if I can still frag and destroy people like I did using a high-end system at this last LAN. Wait a minute, I was using a laptop at this last LAN and I still owned everybody. Huh. Anyway, yeah, it's gonna be fun. So if you want to check it out, I'd love to see you there. I'd love to hang out, and I'd love to frag you in some UT99. So show up and, play hard, frag hard. Until next time, take care, y'all.